off of.
This intensification has just been jaw-dropping. I want to take you over the past 24 hours because at the 11 a.m. advisory and update from the National Hurricane Center yesterday, that's when we officially had our first hurricane of the season, 75 miles per hour. But 24 hours later, now we're dealing with a Category 5 hurricane. That is an increase, by the way, 160 miles per hour. That's an increase of 85 miles per hour. That far exceeds just the basic definition for rapid intensification, which is at least 35 miles per hour increase in wind over 24 hours. Now, 1 in 3 storms do undergo rapid intensification, and you see most Category 4 or 5 storms, which that's what we're dealing with right now, undergo rapid intensification. But this has been levels of extreme. And also the pressure has been dropping rapidly, too, from, say, this time yesterday, we were in the 990s, and now 917. That's our millibars right now. And we're seeing the motion, at least in the short term, has been due west. But starting to see some indications that this is now turning to the northwest, at least. And we want to see that northerly turn, right? Because if this were continue due west, we would have big problems in parts of the Caribbean islands. Look at the lightning activity still within the eye wall, which, by the way, is only about 6 to 7 miles across in diameter. But I want to show you the enhanced satellite and get an up-close view of this because you can see the direction due west. We did not like to see that trend, but in the last couple of frames, you start to see that turn at least to the northwest. And of course, that's captured by the forecast track for the National Hurricane Center. And by the way, I don't think Erin is done intensifying yet. Very much within reach. And this is, of course, the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center, taking this up to 165 miles per hour, which puts this in pretty rare company for this early in the season. Why do we think we're going to see more intensification? One, just by the presentation of what we're seeing. Satellite, you've got the lightning that's still exploding in the eye wall. This is about to move over some very, very warm waters. It already is, but even warmer. Not a lot of dry air to keep this, from the strength of this continuing to intensify. And it's in this pocket where it doesn't have to battle a lot of shear either. Now, all of those factors will come into play, say, down the line, when we start to see weakening, the shear coming in, the dry air, all of that's going to be down the line. But in the short term, there's nothing really to stop this from intensifying more. You're looking at the view from the Puerto Rico radar. You can see the eye, all of the lightning that's packed into that eye. Wind gusts in San Juan starting to pick up a little bit, about 23 miles per hour, but still not seeing those tropical storm force winds. A lot of those winds confined to the northern side of this. And again, this is a very small storm, and that is working in our favor right now. All of that being said, we're still going to see impacts from rain, rough surf, and rip currents, not just in the Caribbean islands, but for the eastern seaboard, too. Now, what allowed us to know that this was a Category 5 hurricane? Well, it was the data from the hurricane hunters. They've been flying through this storm all morning, and I think it was the last pass from the Air Force hurricane hunters that allowed for the upgrade to a Category 5 hurricane. But look at some of the flights scheduled for the remainder of the day. And speaking of the hurricane hunters, I want to show you an image from the hurricane hunters. This was from the NOAA hurricane hunters earlier today. And this view is unbelievable. If we can take this full, just so people can see the detail on this. What you're looking at, and we've been talking about this, is that this will go in between the United States and Bermuda. I will say, interest in Bermuda, you need to watch this one really closely because any kind of wobble that we see to the east is going to put much bigger impacts to Bermuda. But there are a lot of things in play here that are steering Erin in the direction that isn't anticipated to go. Everything is connected when it comes to the atmosphere. So you've got this area of high pressure right now that is steering this to the east. The weakening of this high pressure is going to allow that turn to the north. This area of high pressure that's over the central U.S. and the south, responsible for all of our heat this weekend. That's going to help keep Erin away from the United States mainland. But then we also have the jet stream that's going to be dipping down, bringing a cold front into parts of the Northeast and New England, and that's also going to help draw this to the north. Now, that being said, we still have impacts, and that is big waves, rough surf, and that's going to increase in a big way over the next couple of days because we watch what is a compact storm at the moment become larger and larger as far as the wind field goes. This is the European model ensemble members. I want to show you the American model ensemble members on top of that in orange. You can see in pretty good agreement, and models have been consistent run after run. Occasionally you'll have one run that shows something, but then it goes right back to this solution, which takes it in between the U.S. mainland and Bermuda. That's what we like to see, right? This is a dangerous hurricane. We don't want to see any kind of landfall from this monster of a storm. There's the National Hurricane Center forecast, and again, most likely scenario right in between the U.S. and Bermuda. But I want to show you the wind field expanding, because that's going to have some big impacts. From now to about, say, midweek, this could double, maybe even triple in size, extending out those tropical storm force winds, churning up all of that water, and tropical storm force winds potentially in Bermuda too, as this makes a close pass. But the waves radiating away from the center, it's essentially like dropping a boulder into a pond. And so from areas Florida to the outer banks of North Carolina up into the northeast, we will all see impacts from the rough surf and life-threatening rip currents. We see this time and time again with these powerful storms that move across, basically Hurricane Alley here, and that can cause some big problems. So, Lynette, a lot of people still on summer vacation. Beach plans have to pay really close attention this week.
Exactly, especially across the
It has been a wild 24 hours for Hurricane Erin. So yesterday, we officially had our first hurricane of the Atlantic Basin season. And now we have a major Category 5 hurricane, 160-mile-per-hour winds, extreme rapid intensification, where we saw an increase of 85-mile-per-hour wind speeds over a 24-hour time frame. And not only that, but the pressure has dropped 79 millibars. That is explosive rapid intensification. And how did we know this was a Category 5 storm? Well, this is the pass from the United States Air Force hurricane hunters traveling through Erin and collecting that data that allowed us to know that this is a Category 5 hurricane. And not to mention, look at all of the lightning within this eye wall too. Sometimes they provide video from their passes through the eye. And, this is one of those instances where I really hope we get to see that video, because this just the process of rapid intensification that was ongoing when they were flying through that was just remarkable. Now, what's also remarkable is just how early we are in the season to see this powerful of a hurricane. It's in rare company. It's only the 5th Category 5 hurricane on record to form this early in the hurricane season. The others, at least in very recent history, you have to go back to just last year with Hurricane Beryl, but that was in late June and early July. Remarkably early to see a Category 5 hurricane. There's the presentation on visible satellite. You can see just the symmetrical eye there. A lot of the tropical storm force winds are lopsided on the northern side of this, but you can still see the ongoing lightning within the eye. There's the tropical storm force winds extending about 140 miles out from the center. A lot of that focused on the northern side, but this is a compact hurricane where the hurricane force winds are only about 30 miles extending from the center. All of that is actually good news, because with the tropical storm force winds being more on the northern side of this, that means this is passing just north of some of the Caribbean islands and not feeling those tropical storm force winds. That being said, it's not a great day. We've got the rain bands that are moving through. We're having to watch the flash flooding really closely in areas like Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and areas like Antigua and Barbuda. You're starting to see more of that rain fill in to Puerto Rico, but those outer bands and some of those stronger outer bands just to the north of the islands. Of course, the wave action too, and the rip currents and the rough surf, that's not only present for the Caribbean islands, but as this continues, eventually making that northerly turn, it's going to be growing in size over the next couple of days, the wind field expanding, and that's going to make some big problems for the East Coast as far as rough surf and very dangerous rip currents. In about 1 week, we will mark 20 years since Hurricane